What's going on, everybody? Drew Sanford here with Chad Morgan Taylor. And man, it's awesome to get elite guys. I love, you've done this for years and years, and I've been a fan of yours forever. And the Duke Stanton and Zach Stanton, they're fans of you guys, and we fished together when I was a kid. So we've all followed you from when I did the kids fishing days way back when, and now here we are, and you're doing the Bass Elite, and we get a watch, and now I got a podcast, so I have a reason to harass you for a little bit. So
I always love the harassment. Anytime I get a chance to talk about fishing, how can you go wrong?
There you go. Well, you could be doing it. I mean, it sounds like you've been doing that a lot lately.
A lot. Actually, it's kind of funny. It's a little bit more than what I actually expected. Because of COVID, whenever it hit, it delayed our season 4 months on the Elite Series, which shoved everything. Even though Bass did a great job, they had to reschedule, and we got everything shoved into the fall. Then the flip side of that, when we started the new season, everything was loaded front heavy.
Bang, right back in.
It was like no time off. I mean, we fished into November, and then started in January again, and it's like 2 seasons in 1 year is what it was.
Yeah.
So it's been crazy. I mean, I just literally just now stood back, took a breath. I got back from St. Lawrence and from being gone for 3 weeks up in New York on a stint, and then turned around and went to a kids fish camp on Toledo Bend and come back, and it's just now like wow. But it's all good.
So last week we had Casey Scanlon on, and he talked about it was kind of fun fishing in the fall. Just with COVID last year, it kind of spread stuff out. What did you think about that? Was it fun fishing different? I mean, it's always spring, right? It's January, you're in Florida, and then May, June, July, you're up north. I mean, it was kind of fun for me as a fan to watch. It was different. I mean, what angler's perspective, what did you think?
It definitely was something that was intriguing. So it was a little bit scary going into it because, after 16, 17 years into it and you're fishing that spring, early summer pattern and then off in the fall, you feel like you're setting a deer stand too much in the fall. So there you go. And that's what happened. And so then everything gets shuffled around. And you're like, man, my season's now on a completely different level. And we still went to the same lakes that were lights out in the spring. Sandy Cooper. We're supposed to be there in March. We go in October.
What would a March have been weight-wise?
Oh, good God.
30 a day. I don't even know. Legitimately.
I mean, well, you've seen how we caught him anyway in October, and nobody knew what was going to go down. Nobody had seen the weights of that magnitude, and we still blistered him. So it had been, my first experience with Santee Cooper was in the first year that I fished the top 150s. I averaged 27 pounds a day, and I finished 5th in the event and didn't get any mic time because there was like over 30-pound bags, multiples every day. And Zell ended up winning it with like 118 pounds or something in 4 days. I'm like, wow.
Oof.
It's crazy.
And that lake's still good. I mean, obviously, and that was, when was that? The top 150 was at 90s maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
well, no, that would have been like 03.
03? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just interesting because you see these cycles of lakes, right? They go up and they go down. Gunnersville and Tennessee, they all cycle. And it seems like Santee's, it's kind of like the dark horse. It's always there. It's always pumping out big bags.
It's just got so much cover that you can't, it's very difficult to overfish or outfish that lake. It's hard to navigate. It's got a bajillion cypress trees in it. Now it's got vegetation. So, that's why everybody goes there in that February, March, April time frame, because when you see what's there, because they have no choice but to come to the bank.
Yeah.
And then once it goes past post-spawn, then they can go anywhere. And they just disappear in a lot of instances. And I think a lot of them do what they do here is, the thing is full of trees in deep water. They just go out on them trees and suspend and follow bait around. They don't have to be anywhere. They're good. And they survive.
Yep. They don't get picked off.
And you can't catch them. Yep. You just can't find them.
I mean, it's smallmouth on Table Rock. I mean, same type of deal. They disappear in that summertime. So
every time.
Yep. Cool. Well, let's talk about the season. I mean, what went down? How'd it go? Let's get an inside backstory for some of our fans and stuff that follow us. What was your thoughts of it this year? COVID and pressure. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways we could go on this, but
yeah, this was a weird season for me. And I'm just going to go out there and tell you the schedule was not impressive in my eyes at all. You know, I despised being at the Sabine River. Then we got moved because of COVID. It was supposed to be in July. So, you know, we're like, what are you going to do in Orange, Texas in July? And then, you know, it just moved
It's
all
the
over
two-fish
the
go
case.
rope. Who can catch two
is.
fish?
You know, and it's a 12-inch limit. Oh, man, you know, and it's tough to catch 5 12-inchers there. And, so anyway, you know, it was kind of difficult for me to approach this season with a complete positive mental attitude, which I like to, because everything was moving around. Mm-hmm. You know, you get flood conditions at the Tennessee River, and then you have, you know, we went out of Knoxville for Loudon Tellico, and it's like, what's all this? Why are we doing all this? And why is it 40 when we're here, you know, and the water temperature is in the low 40s, which is not really good for that. Hot, you know, muddy water rolling. I'm like, well, so it was challenging, even though some of those events turned out to be some of my better ones. You know, you had to just go fishing. And
it seemed like it was kind of like the great equalizer, though. You know, you kind of look at this and it's like what you plan on and what you think. I know as a fan watching, going, oh, they're going to catch him doing bop, 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 bop. Every one of them was a damn crapshoot. I mean, there was nothing you could do about it. And I felt, you know, Chad Pipkins is one of my pretty good buddies. And I, you know, just hearing some of the events and what he's doing, I remember at Pickwick. I mean, the change in the water level up there was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
What was it, with like 12-foot difference or something like that from practice to the start of the tournament?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then here's the we never got to practice in the high water because it came up and they started delaying the tournament. So we practiced under normal conditions and then somewhat, whatever normal could be at that point at the time. But then they delayed it for 2 days before they started. So we started with 12 feet high. It's like, well, here we go. You're going to start all over again. Your practice started right then.
It's literally Groundhog's Day, every Bass Elite this year.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, that was a weird tournament for me, too. So I go in and I just have a hard time that first day putting my thumb on what's going down. Of course, you get a guy like me, dirty water, it just jumped 12 feet. Everything in the world looks good, should have a bass on it. But now from fishing Kentucky Lake over the years, I knew those fish on that Tennessee River system did not follow that water immediately, but I couldn't make myself stop. And I kept moving closer and closer and closer to the bank. The shorter time frame that I got, the tighter to cover I moved, and it was the biggest mistake. I catch one fish the first day of the event, and it weighs 3.5 pounds. Mm-hmm. The next day, I go out and catch 22.5 pounds because I made myself.
What'd you do? Slide back out? What'd you do? What happened? So
I told myself,
goes to the bank. Those fish are what, staying out on the current seam still?
Yeah, I said, whatever, you knew this yesterday, but you didn't make yourself do it. So today, you will not fish shallower than 6 foot. I didn't.
Yep.
And I mashed them. I mashed them immediately too. And I was like, oh.
So Bill Lowen won flipping shallow. But some of the stuff he was in probably wasn't really that shallow, was it?
No, Bill was not that shallow, actually. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just as you talk, I'm just thinking he was on some channel swing banks and undercut banks. And
exactly.
Those are still 12, 14 foot of water probably on some of them.
And he was in an area of the lake, actually where I was as well, but he was in an area of the lake that every tournament for the last 2 months had been won in that 3 or 4 mile stretch.
Yep.
And it just, Bill figured something a little bit out. But what the funny part was, almost everybody bailed on that area. In practice, there'd be 50 boats at any given time through that entire system.
Really?
And then when the water came up,
what part of the lake was it?
It was about mid-lake.
Yep.
Yeah, right there by the bridges.
Gotcha.
And it's crazy.
Interesting.
Oh, it just never ceases to amaze you, you know.
So what happened, though? Everybody was in there. They were probably biting just because it sounds like they were in the area. The water came up.
Yeah. Well, they were in the ditches because the water was somewhat at Winter Pool.
Yep.
So they were in the deeper ditches and there was grass there, you know, but whenever the water jumps 12 feet, now everything, where are they going? And Bill figured it out.
Yep. Interesting.
Quickly.
Interesting. Yep.
So
Very
took
cool.
me a day though.
22 pounds isn't shabby.
Still.
What'd you end up in that tournament?
Like 51st. I was the first man out of the 50 cut. Missed it by like 1 ounce. I missed the cuts this year, 1 ounce on that one, and then 1 ounce on another one. And it cost me a grand total of $15,000. Those 2 ounces did this year. That's how fishing is. That's how exciting it is. It's
Isn't that crazy? 2 ounces, 15 grand. Whew.
Two.
Yep. That's interesting.
Oh, and then I ended up in a tiebreaker in one of them and won the tiebreaker against Hackney because I had the heaviest one-day weight. And that was a $5,000 difference, and he ain't forgave me about that yet.
No, I'm sure he won't.
No, he's not. He's a little upset
He's
about
not
that.
gonna
But
be shy
he
about
can
that
be
one.
upset. Whatever.
That's good. Good for him. Well, cool. What COVID and pressure on lakes. I mean, COVID hit. Boat sales are through the roof. Everybody's out on the water doing stuff. Every pontoon that's ever been created is out there floating around, and wake boats and you name it. We've talked a lot about electronics. I mean, it's something that, a lot of our guests lately, they're, Garmin guys, stuff like that. I know you're a Garmin guy. You could see the fish. You could see how they react. You could see that. It seems like the fish are roaming a lot these days doing stuff. Do you think this happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago? Or is it that we know that we see it? Or what's your thought process on pressure and how that's affected it?
There's a lot of things that the electronics that we have available to us have opened our eyes with, how fish react to baits, how they react in certain water temperatures, and we've proved ourselves wrong. My first eye-opening experience was how fast the fish react to baits in 35-degree water.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yep.
Whenever you can see it happening and going down,
Yep.
now you're like, unbelievable. I can't take it away from them. If they don't want me to take it away from them, I'm not getting it back.
Yep.
And
you think about Missouri fishing.
I know.
You're going to go park a jerkbait for 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you twitch it, and then yet you watch them on a grub or whatever, a kitech,
or watch it rolling a rig through a tree.
Yeah, they're screaming through it.
Exactly.
Like, yep.
And so, anyway, with all that being said, the pressure, the increased traffic, which we're both in the industry. Boat sales, motor sales, tackle sales, that's good for all of us. And, it's a lot of people getting out and getting to enjoy the outdoors, which is fantastic. And that's what we all promote. And we have to have fans of the sport, and that to all take place to maintain our jobs and our profession, no matter what you do, from owning a marine dealership or a bait, a retail, outlet to you name it. But what it has done is it's increased the amount of pressure on our lakes to where it changes the fish's patterns for sure and how they'll react. Because now, before in years past, I think the fish did some things to get away from pressure and we just never found them back again. Now we can look forward, we can look side, we can look down, and it's if nothing else, it's you stay around them and educate them because you're constantly casting to them.
Yep.
Even a guy who isn't maybe real proficient, he
Pretty
never was before.
Pretty dang good with a live scope.
Yeah, now it's a game changer.
I think he's talking about me. Not very good, but if he goes to chase him with a live scope long enough, he'll get a couple dumb ones.
But it's just and then of course with all the traffic, it changes where and actually how you can fish for fish now too.
Yep. Let me pivot on that a little bit. I know we said we were going to talk about Florida a little bit. We're going to get to that why you kick everybody's butt in Florida. But Texas, all right? So they've got probably the best parks and recreation, and I mean, they're dumping fish in, things like that.
Yep.
Compared to, we live in Missouri, and I don't want to pick on them being mean, but they don't do what Texas does. I don't know that anybody on earth does what Texas does.
Right.
Is it different?
That's a good question. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
Volume of new bait or new fish or new, genetics in the pool has got to help. But, Lake Fork gets as much pressure as any lake on earth.
It does. And, you can still see the difference in the pressure there. The only thing that Texas has got that it gets so hot there that people just literally won't go out and play. So they won't go out and even fish those fish. But boy, when the weather's okay, they will beat them up beyond. And every other person in Texas is born with a fishing pole and a bass boat and a 4-wheel drive truck. Yep. That's fact.
Yep.
And here, even though we have a great population and all of our youth programs are successful, and more so up and coming, but I just don't. Our lakes are pretty vast. You take Bull Shoals, for example. It's a hidden gem. I love going there in the summer. I mean, you'll fish till noon and see three or four boats. Yeah, I know. But it still don't matter how much you talk about it. It's still, it's out of the way.
It's hard. There's not a lot of hotels. There's not a lot of places to stay. The food and lodge, it's just not above average by any stretch. It's below average. And not being mean, but it's just a more difficult rural area. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it has changed. And I think Texas does a good job. But I think if they didn't do a good job, they'd have a disaster immediately on their hands.
Yep. I can buy that. I can 100% buy that. And it's just interesting. You know, you look at all that they do and you wonder what would Table Rock look like or what would Lake of the Ozarks. I mean, Lake of the Ozarks, and I don't want to speak for them because I don't know, but I don't see Fish and Game out there trying to help bass fishing on those lakes. But could you imagine if they put some effort in on, you know, you can name the lake around. Yeah, wow. I mean, it's just neat. But like you said on Fork, it's the same Lake of the Ozarks. You ain't going out on Saturday at 2:00 to go bass fishing. That's just, you know, not unless you're in the river or away from people. But yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you know, the pressure of the boats and what goes on. You fish a lot of big lakes around I mean, you go to the premier lakes around the country. Like a Lanier, it's busy like a Lake of the Ozarks. I mean, you think some of those premier lakes don't get pressure, or are premier lakes because maybe pressure in the summer months, stuff like that, keep them out?
Yeah, it does. I don't think that, you know, they just can't hold the tournaments there during the summer because of the traffic, just like here. They still deal with pretty severe temperatures, which, you know, if they did, mortality rate would be high. So they just kind of steer away from it. I think that's something that a lot of people has to recognize, the fact of you cannot continuously have events in those high temperature months. I don't care. There are ways to keep the fish alive until you weigh them in, but still you're just delaying mortality rate in a lot of instances there. That's why a lot of these tournament organizations are done by July, or we're in up north where it's only 80.
Yeah.
You know, it's not 100 to 105.
Yep.
And, you know, so, yeah, I mean, it's to answer your question but I think the makeup is kind of interesting of all of those lakes as well. You look at Lanier. It's deep. It's full of trees. There's a lot of fish out there that just don't get picked on. And in the summertime, that's where they go. And in the wintertime, you know, they're down there when that thermocline dissipates, they go even deeper. And here, I think that probably saves Table Rock a lot. And the docks at Lake of the Ozarks save it a lot. You know, I think there's interesting things in place that work with Mother Nature, whether we recognize it or not, just to protect it.
What I was always fearful of with the A-rig is I feel like a lot of big fish got caught that never got caught. You know what I mean? I think that bait in itself caught fish that traditionally, I mean, you'd have people, I mean, obviously you could throw grubs or go Kitex or whatever it is out deep, but I still think that some of those big fish, they didn't ever look at an individual bait and eat it. They were eating the schools, and you know, I think that A-rig caught a lot of fish too, and I almost feel like we kind of saw a dip right after that A-rig came out. Just you know, I was living in Alabama when that happened, and you know, those big fish, all of a sudden the next year or two afterwards, it was like, where did the sevens go? You know what I mean? And now I feel like they've kind of come back up, but I think the fish have adjusted. Like you said, instead of living here, they just go live over there where they don't feel the pressure, and it's interesting. It's really
they're educated with the bait too. So I've read some research and some articles about how, even if, so, you know, as a tournament angler, every once in a while, you know, we'll practice and you'll get bites and you'll shake that fish off, you know, rather than catch him, so that hopefully you can return during tournament time and catch him back, okay? And, you know, a lot of the research has proven that even in the instance that fish bites that bait and you don't catch him, so you don't cause any trauma to him, and it releases the bait, you get it back, everything's good, it creates a situation to where that bait associates that presentation, that color, that particular shape with not being able to have any substance. So it didn't do it any benefit. So it won't
eat it again.
It doesn't. It isn't as inclined to eat it again.
Yeah.
So we thought maybe we were doing ourselves favors.
So you better start throwing your buddies' baits in practice.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know Pipkins is going to be fishing here. I'm going to go throw a Ned rig on this deal, drop shot.
That's funny.
And shake them all off.
Shake them all off. We never caught a single one of your fish, man. Promise.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. So what do you do as a tournament angler? I mean, I didn't want to go negative, and we're not talking negative, but you know, that's not positive about the fish, that they're getting harder to catch. They're doing this, they're doing that. But how do you catch them? How do you approach it with technology and everything that's changed and the amount of people out there? You know, gosh, man, these guys that use a fishing pole for the depth of their boat don't seem so dumb anymore now, right? Now they're, you know, are the fish biting shallower better because everybody's out deep? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean,
what do you do?
So yes, there is a lot of overlooked patterns and things that happen. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to
come back next year and beat everybody.
You might not want him to come back because he could probably rule it again. You know, but you have to open your eyes to all possibilities and try to do that. Time on the water for me, just the sheer number of hours we put in makes a difference. And of course, my network's with the guys that put all those hours in as well. So we share stuff here and there amongst the group, especially in the elites. There's some tight knit groups up there. But yeah, I mean, you can't count anything out at this point. And it's no different than ledge fishing at Kentucky or pick. We're on Tennessee River systems where as soon as the first person hears that somebody caught one on a ledge, there's no more shallow fishing to be taking place with the local guys. It's all everybody's out there on electronics. Well, we don't take an idiot to realize, well, there's still a lot of fish in the bushes. And I have cast a pile of checks power fishing shallow in late May and June. So I mean, it just takes keeping an open mind.
Yep.
And staying on the water.
So you go dump the boat into the lake to go pre-fish, doing stuff like that. Random lake, doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously, you always hear people want to fish their string, stuff like that. I'm sure you probably agree with that.
Oh, yeah, you want to.
But gosh, on your off season, are you expanding? Are you throwing a net? Are you learning some of this other stuff that you may not traditionally like? Or do you just say, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it?
Yeah, I'm no different than anybody else out there. You got guys out there that don't have confidence in a jig. Well, the way to get over that is to go out there and fish a jig, at least some, every time you put your boat on the water, no matter the conditions, so that you gain that confidence. And I'm no different. I'm a little more well-polished probably in all the different areas than some, but at the same time, there's always room for improvement in all areas. And so at the Elite Series level, it's a little bit different. The guys that compete there are better than most at almost every technique. The competition is of such to where now you are dealing with the best in the industry and you're all on the same body of water. And if you miss one little clue or you take a left turn when you should have gone right, you get your brains beat in and immediately. So you'll have a 60th or 70th place finish rather than a top 30, if that makes sense. So you got to put everything in perspective. So then but you have to keep those skills honed, or I do. And then with the advancements in, I mean, like I do all kinds of different things in my off season. Like I change my transducer locations on my trolling motor around. I'll change my settings. I do the software updates. I'm in pretty close contact with all of the electronic manufacturers, especially Garmin. That anytime they hear or see something that might help, whether it's a setting adjustment or this or that, they usually try to pass it along. And so I'll go out and see if that's worth its weight or what happens. So, it's all that. But
what's interesting and like I was down in Florida with you this spring for a Toyota series down there.
Yeah.
And
Tovo.
You jumped in the boat, jumped on my graph, fixed a few things, just cleaned it up, did a few things like that. My perspective is, I fished the Toyota series, I might fish some Bass Open, stuff like that. Not your level, not even anywhere close. But what's interesting is like the Toyotas and the Opens, everybody's really good. I mean, you've got 50% of the guys that are there that could win, and then you've got donators, and then you've got guys that have no business being there, but they're there. But and that's kind of every level minus the very top. But with technology and everything, I feel like everybody's really close. But as you start cracking and doing better, and as I've developed as an angler and cashing more checks and doing better, it is truly the devil's in the details with that stuff. And I mean, just hearing you talk on that, just adjusting the graph, transducer locations, things like that. Do you think, how do I say this, I guess? There's some guys you watch on TV, I think you're pretty good friends with Gerald Swindle. Like, he seems like he doesn't give a dang, and he's Mr. Go have a good time, blah, blah, blah. I think at the end of the day, he's adjusting the things and doing that stuff too. I mean, are most of the guys getting that dialed in and tuned in with stuff? Or do you think there's some of the guys that they're just naturally gifted and they're just going to go dump their boat in the lake and go fish?
So there are both those scenarios. There are some guys at the Elite Series level that are very successful that have. I'm just going to throw Greg Hackney out there, for example, because we talked about him earlier. Greg is known as a shallow water power fisherman, and anytime you have that scenario roll up, he's always more than likely going to be in the top 10. What a lot of people don't understand is whenever Greg finishes in the top 20 or top 30 to help his classic berths, AOY runs or whatever, is finesse fishing, drop shot, deep water structure, stuff that he is known not for whatsoever.
Opposite, yeah.
And he puts very little time in doing that, but is so talented that he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
It is better than most at its weakest. If that makes sense.
Yes, 100%.
And there are guys like that. Now, there's guys out there, and there'll be years that are different. There'll be years that whenever you put your boat on the water, you'll think that you possibly could be the most gifted angler that ever threw a bait, and then the very next year, you could figure that I don't even know how to hold the rod and reel correctly. And you just struggle for every bite that you get, every fish you catch. The ups and downs in this sport are amazing, and they will absolutely mentally break you. But there are guys out there that have the appearance of dealing with it. Now Gerald will have a high-speed common part about every other day.
Yep.
Gerald does. And we laugh, and we complain, and then we have good times together, and we go out, and we've spent a lot of time together. But Gerald works at it hard. And even though he deer hunts a lot and everything, that's kind of his getaway. But, man, he does. I mean, you don't win 2 AOY titles without doing it. And, he's just one of those guys that he'll tell you. And he'll be the first to tell you, you had a pretty decent year this year, Gerald. Yeah, but it was like I fought for every bite I had. It was a grind from the time that I started practice till the time the last tournament day was over with.
So as a local angler, it's no different for them as it is for you guys. I mean, there's time when you're on a run, you ain't going to get stopped. And when it turns the other way, you might as well be in a canoe on the wrong dang lake. That being said, how do you manage that? How do you get out of those? What do you do in those situations?
It's a little bit different for everyone. If you let it continue to bother you to the point of, so first of all, you've got to recognize on each, what I do is I'll back up and I'll look at that individual event once everything's over with, and I can then view social media and see what's going, or I listen to the winner and or the top 10 guys, and I talk with them of what went down, where I made my mistakes. I learned that, and I put that in the bank, however you want to do it. Keep notes that you don't ever want to make that mistake again. You thought you knew better, and you was obviously proven wrong. In so many different ways. So that's one thing, just absolutely recognizing what you've learned. Don't go back to that place again. And then, the other is you just have to keep telling yourself that I've lived, for me, it's pretty easy because I've lived through so many up and downs in my career, over 18 years. But experience and time on the water will help buffer all those situations. And I will continue to get better. I'm not going to give this up. And hopefully the situation isn't as of such to where, your financial situation completely depends on doing great the next tournament.
All right, everybody, thank you. It's been another show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like it, like us, subscribe, hit the ding button, and comment. Let us know if we're doing a good job. Thanks.